Hey, I'm BryCox, BryCoxWORKSHOPS.com. I've got a video here with a lot of some deep concepts I want to get into, and I'm calling the video The Pandemic of Fear. Why? Because I feel like the reaction of crowds and groups, this viral reaction to this virus right now is far more dangerous than the virus itself, right? Fear is the worst thing. And it's not helped by television or the news or Instagram or Facebook or all the people's worry, right? Stirring all that up. That's not helping at all. So I have three areas of my life that I spend a lot of time and energy, right? And those three areas of life effectively are telling me the same thing, and that's to not have fear. So what are those three areas? Well, one is business, being an entrepreneur, which is, I could also put in that being a creative or being creative-minded. I think being entrepreneurial, to be successful entrepreneurial, you need to be creative, and particularly as photographers, we're creative-minded. So that's just one bubble right there, right? The business aspect. And from a business aspect, it does not help to have fear. If you have fear, what do? You freeze. And it's not good from business to freeze. You have to do some kind of movement. In fact, I could talk about some of these other areas. But we have to do something, right? And so let's talk about those other areas. So the second one would be religious aspect of my life. That's a big part of my life. I know it's not for everybody, but I feel like it's the same solutions that are in all these. And the other area would be, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I spend quite a bit of time and energy gun training, spending time with counter-terrorists and some of the best trainers in the country, just training up and shooting, and I think it's a blast, right? So maybe you want to call it survival training or outdoorsmanship, I don't know, whatever it is. But the gun training, all right? So business, gun training, and religion. And so this isn't a sermon, so don't worry. If you're not religious, don't worry. But from a religious point of view, one of the most common things in the Old Testament and New Testament is the phrase the Lord says to not fear. Don't have fear, fear not, some form of that. It is so common, and we're supposed to approach fear with hope, with preparedness, and with work, right? So there's a lot, we could dig into work quite a bit. But I think just one example is if you know the end of the world's coming, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to continue to hoe in your field, meaning you're supposed to plant seeds and fertilize and all these things, meaning that there's a pipe, right? You got to put things in the pipe here to get something down here. I got to plant seeds and do all this kind of daily work in order to get a harvest down here. And that's how business is. I have to plant seeds in my business. I got to get people interested. I got to get things lined up and then do a photo shoot and an order appointment. And then eventually down here, I get paid. And so that means I need to still be doing things here to get paid down here instead of, what does fear do? Fear makes us freeze. And it makes us do nothing. And it makes us worry, a lot of times for nothing, right? So there's a lot of fear, and people go, oh, no, this is legitimate. It's pretty legitimate fear right now. And I think, but that's why I'm calling the video The Pandemic of Fear, because I feel like it's more the reaction that is far worse than the actual virus itself. And with that, I don't want to spend time because there's plenty of news and all that on stats and data and numbers. But what's interesting is that every single day, all the stuff they said 2 weeks ago and the stuff they said 1 week ago has been shown at this point to be far exaggerated, right? And if anything, the news gets better and better and better, and all of these projections and all these horror stories and horrible things are actually better. And there's some outliers, and there's some places that are bad. I don't want to get into all that, but the point is that it is the job of media to get people excited. And so if we can handle, I think, if you have fear, if you can approach it with hope, with preparedness, and with work, those are going to be three great ways of controlling that fear and handling that fear. So it's the same with survival, with gun training. In fact, if you get dropped in some bizarre place, let's say you're on an airplane, the airplane crashes, and you get plopped into some bizarre like jungle or top of a mountain or a desert or something, the first thing you're supposed to focus on is your fear, right? There's what's called the rule of threes. And I'll give you this, because this is actually pretty interesting, because what does most people do? Most people focus on the wrong thing. Just like the news says something scary, and what does everybody do? They all run to the wrong thing. They all go and crowd and buy toilet paper. Exactly the wrong thing to be buying. And what do they do? It causes a run on toilet paper for no reason. right? Because there's this crowd mentality. And so if you got dropped by a plane crashes and you're just dropped in the middle of somewhere, what do? They start eating berries because they're just freaking out that they got to survive. But foods actually last. So the rule of threes is it's a list. 3 seconds, 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks. And so you can go 3 seconds with the wrong mindset, which means in the first few seconds, you got to get your brain in the right place. And if you get your brain thinking positively, now you can move forward. It's the same with creativity. When I talk about business, and I do my courses on business or creativity to photographers, if you show up to a wedding and it's kind of a bad wedding, bad location, people are arguing, sun's in the wrong place, they're going to get married with the sun and lattice across their faces, whatever, that's a bad wedding. But if you see it as a problem, then your brain starts turning off and you become negative. And if you see it as a challenge, which is the same thing but flipped in a positive way, now your brain lights up. And in fact, from a psychology standpoint, if you put things on your head and they meter you and measure you, if you're thinking negatively, it's like a house with the lights turning off. Boom, 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 the room starts turning off. But if you're thinking positively, it's like flipping on all the lights and your whole brain starts working and working together. So the first thing in a survival standpoint is to focus on fear. Get your brain in the right space. And in 3 minutes, you can go 3 minutes without air. So, if you're underwater or something, a lot of people freak out and drown. It's like, no, I got 3 minutes. You remember that? That's a long time. I got 3 minutes to figure this out. 3 hours without the right shelter. It's like for exposure. Let's say you're like in freezing cold water or really hot desert area, right? If the exposure is something dangerous, then you go, well, now I've done the first things. Now my next thing right now is to build a shelter or something to control exposure. You can go 3 days without water. So that's pretty nice. A lot of people get their brain starts freaking out if they don't have a canteen on them or something. But it's like, no, now that I've got shelter, now I've got that, hopefully you're also signaling and trying to figure out communications. But at the very least now, the next thing is water. And then you can go 3 weeks without food. So that's pretty nice. You don't want to go 3 weeks without food, but what do people do? They immediately go to the wrong thing, the berries. Right, just like, the news says something scary and everybody runs for toilet paper. And what happens is some people like toilet paper, the news reports on it, everybody then runs for toilet paper. And everyone's kind of doing this crowd mentality, right? That's why I call it, it's almost a viral reaction to the virus. And that's why I feel like the viral reaction to how crowds react is one of the most dangerous things. So, but all those 3 areas, business, religion, and survival, they all say the same thing, right? Don't fear, and approach that fear with preparedness, with hope, and with work, right? Do those daily things. We talked about like planting seeds, but it's the same thing. Like if I'm in a survival situation, now I've got work. What's the work? I have to start doing certain things. Work on communication, working on, the rule of threes and which thing I need to work on next, work on getting myself out of there or hunkering in, whichever is the best solution. With business, what's my work? Maybe you don't have any work right now. Maybe all your work's completely cut off, but there's still work to do. Like I myself, I've gotten pretty dang behind on my blog and Instagram. Why? Because, I don't know, I guess I haven't felt like it. I've been busy. I've been so busy with other things and work and other jobs that I'm like, do I really need social media as much as I feel like I do? So I've been putting it off, right? But it's a good thing. I should post more than I do. I should get back to my normal routine of trying to have a fun new shoot on my blog every week. That just, here's a fun new shoot, and here's some images that I post on Instagram, that point back to the blog. So I've been behind on that, so that's some work I could be doing. I've got jobs right now I need to work on and finish. There's some ways, if I look at all the ways I make money as a photographer, whether it be all the things you might do, right? Families, kids, weddings, high school seniors, whatever. A lot of those are kind of cut off. We can't necessarily get, say, a family together right now, particularly in the studio or on location. And then the weather's not great outside anyway. But, maybe there's some areas of photography I can get. And maybe if I adapt, and that's what each of us have to do, is kind of sit down and go, what can I do? First, let's list them out. Here's all the ways I make money as a photographer. Bang, 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 bang. Now, what are 3 areas of those that maybe I could really kind of focus on and adapt for right now, where I could start planting some seeds, where I could start getting some jobs in maybe in 2 weeks, 3 weeks or something, and start getting some of those things lined up. A really good thing to think about is avoiding crowds, right? The kind of the crowd mindset. So I'm thinking about this because I see all these crowds herding to the store buying what I feel like are the wrong things, just a crowd. And from a marketing standpoint, we always want to avoid crowds from the business mindset, right? If everybody's doing this as a photographer, and there's like 90% of photographers all doing this, from a marketing standpoint, I am far better off being over here. If all of these people if it's like a big pile of lemons and here's a lime, the lime stands out. It's green compared to the yellow, and your eye just goes whoop to what's different. And so you want to stand out. If everybody, like I do this a lot, I talk about this in business courses, in creativity, right? It's the 80-20, the Pareto principle. If 80% of photographers or 80% of people doing this, I'm better off being with a 20% doing something different, being unique, standing out in some way. And so none of that has to do with stores. If I see a crowd all crowding to something, my initial response, because of training for survival, right? You don't want to follow crowds. For business, I don't want to follow crowds. Religious part of my life says the same. It says pretty much if you're religious, you're probably in the minority, right? Don't follow the world. Don't follow the trends, but instead, be your unique individual and really try to stand up for what's right. Right? It's all telling me the same thing. Avoid crazy crowds and just be a smart person and do what I need to do myself. So, preparedness and a plan. So, sitting down and kind of thinking about preparedness and a plan, I feel like the first thing I can do is avoid television, social media, basically avoiding screens, right? There's two windows to the world outside. There's the screen, which is like a lot of people's vision of how the world works. And then there's your actual window, which if you walk outside, you talk to your neighbors, if you're involved with a church or your community, that's a completely different view. And what's really interesting, and it's not just about this, but you could, and poll after poll after poll, this is a very common theme. As people say, what do you think this is like? And then what are you like? And it's always, the world's horrible, but I'm okay, right? Looking out the screen, the world's horrible, but looking out my window, I'm okay. So you could, there's a lot, here's an example, divorce. What's the divorce rate? Oh, the world's terrible, 50% divorce rate, and it's going up. This divorce is going crazy. Well, how's your life? Well, my marriage is probably fine, right? It's doing pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but no marriage is, but it's pretty dang good, right? It's this, the world's bad, but I'm okay. Now, I'm not married. That's just an example. But here's what's interesting is the divorce rate in America has never been 50%, hasn't even been close to 50%, not even its high in the 80s, and it's been going down since. For like 30 years, it's been going down. Now, I mean, it's still too high, and there's reasons why, we have still too many divorces, but that's a whole nother subject. But the point is people's belief compared to the truth, because we're far more attracted to negativity, just the way our brain's wired. It's a psychological thing. It's kind of, it's some psychologists say it's to protect us from falling into pits, right? If you're worried about the cliff, then that'll program you for survival. So we're kind of programmed to far more believe negative news than positive news. So the first thing is to avoid windows, the wrong window, right? I mean, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't matter, what side of the spectrum politically you're on. You kind of see that news is just kind of really exaggerated a lot. And at the same time, your community is pretty amazing, right? I was out working in my yard just here recently, right? Because I lost some appointments. I'm like, well, I'm going to get some jobs done outside, get a lot of my yard work done. All of my neighbors were outside, school was canceled, so all the kids are out playing, and they're jumping on tramps and riding bikes. And I was like, it's a pretty nice day out here, right? I don't see the reasons for immediate fear, like no one's life's immediately in danger. Like, yeah, is everyone being cautious? Everyone's being cautious. If I walk up, to the edge of my property, my neighbor, and he says, we're saying hi, it's at a distance. I noticed we're not as close. No one's standing as close as they used to. So people are being cautious. But I feel like there's a far more positive view being involved with my community. Some things to think about, like it's a great time to kind of think about my preparedness. So here's a whole list of actionable items we can do, right? So what are some things? Maybe my emergency fund isn't as big as it ought to be, or maybe I need to be focusing on some other things. Maybe I need to build up my personal food storage or something, right? And I feel like food storage, that's something that we've been taught a lot just in church, but I feel like it's an important thing particularly as a business owner, is what if you're out of work for 2 months or 3 months or something? What if you get hurt? What if it's only you that gets hurt and it's not the entire economy around you? Or what if it is the entire community? What if it's like a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake or something just wipes that area out for a while? What's your plan? And instead of sitting around and filling out forms and trying to get money from the government, I feel like it's far better for me right now to say, okay, what can I do? Maybe I stock up on some wheat and oats and beans or something, right? So I've got some food set aside for an emergency, and I've got some things set aside, money-wise, where I'm not, selling off stocks or something, right? Because you don't want to sell off stocks in a down economy. This is the time to be buying stocks if you got extra money. So, some financial reserve, some food reserve, and then that takes all the pressure off. And now I can start focusing on what am I going to do on my business moving forward? What can I do? Right? I'm not worried about my day-to-day anymore. I'm now worried about 2 months out or 3 months out. So now let's focus on that. And let's start working on that right now today and thinking myself out. And also filling my day with more positive things. We talked about your brain thinks better and it thinks a lot. It's more excited. It actually is more electric when you're thinking positively. So what are some things we can do? Some actionable things we could do, any of us right now. And I think, so here's a list. Start sending out some thank you cards to some people. Is there anybody that you owe a thank you card to? I myself, I make my own thank you cards. I have these printed at my lab. I design it with my own photo. So it's something really nice and custom, right? So I've been thinking about some thank you cards I could send out right now. And I've made a little list that I'm going to work on tonight. Anybody you can check in on, right? Maybe they're doing better than you, but maybe emotionally they're not. Maybe it'll really, really help them to just get a phone call or a text and to say, hey, how are you doing in your part of the country, wherever you are? How are things? I hope you're, surviving all this craziness in the world. Just little things. Make a phone call. Talk to your neighbors. Are you involved with your church, your community? What can you do better to be involved with some of that? Is there some neighbor you could run some errands for? Maybe somebody can't leave to go get groceries. Maybe they're older and they're not supposed to get out of their house. And maybe that's something you could do. You could go get some things for them easily. Something that would really make a big difference in their life. It's a great time to start thinking about your marketing. Revive it. Change it up, right? Because now we're going, revise it, because what I had planned for the future is going to change. That the next few weeks, maybe a month or so, is going to change. So now I got to revise what I was going to do. And it's a great time to kind of sit down and think about some of those things. It's a great time to get some things done around the house, work in the yard, get some to-do lists, things figured out, spring clean, deep clean some areas, make my studio looking amazing because I work out of my house, but also get the house area looking amazing. I like to keep it clean anyway, but why not deep clean? Why not really go through some of those closets and cupboards and just start getting rid of stuff? And if it's possible, donate it to groups that need it, right? Check in on friends, get some exercise in. If you're not used to exercise, it's a great time. If you can't leave your house, maybe you can go on a walk at least, right? As long as you're from staying a distance away from people, depending on where you live. But at the very least, you could get some exercise done in your house. A friend of mine just started an online yoga free lessons, right? So I did yoga this morning. I got up, signed in, took her yoga class, and got some yoga in. So I think being prepared, being positive, approaching fear with preparedness, with hope, and with work is one of the best things we can do right now. So it's a little longer video, I know, but if you have any questions, send them to me, or any comments, post them below. And hopefully you're doing great wherever you are, and you're staying safe, and hopefully your business will recover well, and hopefully, right, we can have a great game plan moving forward. So, all right, if you want any more training, by the way, I've actually dropped all my prices on my website quite a bit, and I got some sales too to try to help photographers out. So that's at BryCoxWORKSHOPS.com. But also check out, if you're a photographer, check out PPA, Professional Photographers of America, PPA.com. Check that out. And a lot of great ways to be learning at home as well. So avoid TV, avoid news, and work on more positive things. That's my message. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, you guys. Until next time, America.